Let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Cathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the farce.
Caitlin Clark's season is officially over, and the WNBA only has itself to blame. From a quad strain in May, to repeated groin injuries in June and July, to a bone bruise in August, her body kept breaking down. Clark's absence for the rest of the season isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a league-wide disaster born from lousy officiating, poor communication, and constant physical targeting of one player. Fans are fed up, demanding answers, refunds, and calling for boycotts. And the league's response? Silence at best. How did the league let its biggest star fall apart in just 13 games? And what does Commissioner Cathy Engelbert say about all this? Let us know down in the comments below if you think the WNBA is to blame. Let's go.
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoffs.
How many times did the refs just stare straight ahead while Clark got shoved into a screen, grabbed by the jersey, or flat out knocked off balance, and then pretended it never happened? That's the part that eats at fans. We all saw it in real time. Possession after possession, Clark getting hammered coming off a curl, thrown into help defense, sometimes even double-teamed before she even touched the ball. And the officials had plenty of chances to blow the whistle. Instead, they swallowed it, and it became a pattern that the Washington Post later put into writing. This wasn't one team being overly physical. It was the entire league taking liberties with a player who instantly became the face of the sport.
Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
And the league's most valuable draw, the one who carried not just her own franchise but half the WNBA's ratings spike, was left hung out to dry. Think about that. One player filling arenas in Dallas, Las Vegas, New York, and Chicago should have been treated like the investment she was. Instead, while networks cut record checks to broadcast her games, refs refused to grant her even the basic call stars get every single night in every other league. What we got was bodies flying into her off-ball, hand-checking that stopped her cuts before they even started, and defensive contact that would have been a foul for anyone else.
The WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen Caitlin Clark.
This wasn't just annoying to watch. It was dangerous. Those kind of constant cheap shots don't just make a player sore. They add up over weeks, grinding on muscles that were already strained. Clark's quad that tightened in May, her groin that burned through June, were no mystery injuries. Repeated hits, twisted pivots from denied space, unprotected landings. Those are exactly the things that lead to stress injuries that never really heal without extended rest. She was forced to keep playing through all of it because the alternative would have meant empty arenas that fans had already bought into.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham, she gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
That's why people call it hypocrisy. The WNBA begged for headlines about record ticket sales, overflowing merchandise orders, and new sponsorship deals centered around Caitlin Clark's name. Yet, when it came to the simplest job, protecting the player responsible for those payday checks, they wanted to act like she was just another newcomer. The reality is, she wasn't. And letting her get battered night after night meant they didn't just compromise game results, they put the entire season in jeopardy.
The folks that cover the NBA, these people that play in the NBA, these people that cover the NBA, there, I said these people, all of you, black, white, green, purple, why don't you understand a very simple thing? Her game is dynamic. Like Diana Taurasi was like a jackass to Caitlin Clark. Why? Her game is what people are drawn to. And then you go to the personality. Her game is different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say?
So what happens when your golden goose stops playing? What happens when the league refuses to call fouls, and the end result is your star limping instead of running the floor? Now we know. The negligence from the referees didn't just tilt one box score. It laid the groundwork for Caitlin Clark's season-ending collapse. And the backlash that started on court didn't stay there for long. It spread. Was Caitlin Clark's sophomore season doomed from the very first preseason practice? It feels that way now. Go back to training camp in May. Reports already mentioned her quad tightening up, something most athletes would rest to prevent further damage. Instead, she was rolled out as the centerpiece of every event, every practice session, every marketing push. Less than 2 months later, the problem escalated into a groin injury. By July, that groin became a full-blown tear on the right side, and with that came the announcement no one wanted to hear. Clark was done for the year. The story of how we got there isn't one moment. It's a series of decisions that never gave her a chance.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and the WNBA.
What's frustrating is that she never really had a stretch of games where she was fully healthy. She was listed as day-to-day at least 3 separate times, and each time the word precautionary was attached like it was reassurance. But what precaution means in the WNBA apparently is having your #1 draw squeeze in limited treatment windows, tape up, and head back onto the court the same weekend. It was like watching someone run on one leg and being told they were fine.
Clark, a 2-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery process.
That's where the mismanagement comes in. Anyone who has followed sports knows injuries compound if you don't let them heal. Pushing her through back-to-back games, heavy defensive attention, and road travel so quickly didn't just risk setbacks, it guaranteed them. Coaches had to know she looked limited. Her driving burst slowed down, her cuts came up short, and she grimaced through minutes she never should have logged. The medical staff's job was to protect her even if Clark pushed to play, and they failed her.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
Think about the hours she said she was putting in just to get a shot at returning. Hours in the gym trying to strengthen everything around that injury, only to fall back to square one again. While fans were bombarded with reports of probable return dates, inside the locker room, it was obvious her body wasn't responding like it needed to. The public was being kept on the hook. Stadiums advertised road matchups featuring Clark, and fans bought tickets hoping to see her. All along, she was nowhere near 100%, and that disconnect stings.
And this is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me and the fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
So was revenue prioritized over her health? It's hard to see it any other way. The Fever relied on her to fill arenas. The WNBA relied on her to push television numbers. And nobody pumped the brakes when the warning signs started flashing. As a result, Caitlin Clark didn't go down from a freak accident. She unraveled after 13 games because of a season-long spiral of short-sighted choices. And that spiral didn't just cut her career years short, it pulled the financial momentum of the league straight down with it. The moment Cathy Engelbert finally addressed Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, fans realized something wasn't right. Here was the commissioner of the league facing the biggest player health disaster in years, and yet her statement sounded like something crafted by a corporate PR team rather than a leader actually grappling with the seriousness of what happened. It was the very definition of sanitized, vague optimism, a little nod to league growth, and no hard acknowledgement that the refereeing failures and lack of player protection played any role in what fans had just watched unfold.
This is on your head, Cathy Engelbert, and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Cathy, resign.
That disconnect is what stung. Clark went from carrying the weight of record ratings to sitting on the injury list for months. Instead of hearing a commissioner say, "Yes, mistakes were made, and here's how we'll fix them," Engelbert chose to pivot back to the same talking points about expansion, revenue streams, and constructive dialogue. That might look fine on a financial report, but fans could see the bigger problem. The very referees she employs had failed to control repeated physical targeting, and rather than call them out or promise accountability, she ignored it altogether.
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved. It's clear there seems to be problems or a disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
It's even more insulting when you realize how much Engelbert has highlighted league growth every time a camera is on her. Growth built entirely on Clark's back, while those referees were allowed to swallow their whistles as she absorbed shove after shove. She celebrated packed arenas in May and June. But by August, when those same arenas were filled with angry fans demanding refunds, she still wanted to talk profits instead of responsibility. To supporters who had just invested their money, their time, and their hope into this season, it sounded like she was living in a parallel world.
I know as a fan of sports for 60 years now, I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting the best product out on the court, and our officiating then follows that.
The backlash was immediate. On social media, even longtime WNBA diehards said Engelbert's silence on referee accountability proved the league didn't care about Clark's safety. Some used words like betrayal. Others went straight to action, demanding refunds and posting proof of canceled ticket orders. What started as disappointment in Clark's injury turned into hostility toward league leadership. The commissioner had a window to connect with fans, admit the officiating problem, and promise protection for all players moving forward. Instead, she delivered hollow lines that only amplified the anger already brewing.
They play against Breanna Stewart. She goes to the line 14 times. Asia Wilson goes to the line 13 times. And Aaliyah Boston can't play 20 minutes in a game without being on the bench in foul trouble. That's another problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, this year, it's not just Caitlin Clark. If you wear that Indiana Fever jersey, consider it done. The refs are not going to be fair, and they are going to cheat and do whatever it takes to do what the higher-ups say.
Fans now see Engelbert as a symbol of a league where public relations matter more than health, where the star attraction is used as a marketing piece rather than safeguarded as a long-term investment. That realization has hardened into a movement. Boycott talk isn't loose chatter anymore. It's organized, shared, and targeted at draining playoff attendance. Engelbert's hollow words didn't calm anything. They lit the fire higher, proving she was completely out of touch with the core problems eating away at her league. And once that disconnect took root, it paved the way for the panic that was about to slam directly into the league's bottom line. All it took was one injury announcement for the market to collapse. All-Star tickets that were running over $200 in June dropped to barely $60 overnight, and the resale sites became flooded with people trying to dump seats they had circled for months. This wasn't just any All-Star weekend either. It was in Indiana, Clark City, the stage the league had hyped as her first chance to shine on the national stage at home. The hype disappeared in a matter of hours, leaving an event that suddenly felt hollow.
We've got Colin Cowherd saying, you know what? Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? He just come out and said it yesterday. Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. That's why. He said, I led my show, my biggest, largest national sports radio show in the country. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year. I mean, you don't lead a show with anybody unless they can draw.
Fans who spent huge amounts expecting to see Clark competing in contests and being celebrated as the face of the league were now demanding refunds. It wasn't anger about the money as much as it was the feeling that they'd been strung along with constant day-to-day labels while the people inside the league already knew her chances of returning were slim. When push came to shove, it looked less like bad luck and more like the league trying to maximize every single dollar before the truth finally came out. That desperation had already played out long before the injury announcement. The league had moved multiple Indiana Fever road games to bigger arenas because Clark's name sold them out instantly. Teams that normally played in front of 6,000 or 7,000 were relocating to NBA-sized buildings, promoting the matchup as a marquee attraction. Now those same venues were facing refund requests, upset fans, and empty rows of seats. A lot of people didn't even wait. They immediately canceled or flipped their tickets the moment Clark was ruled out, and resale values showed the panic.
The ticket prices. The demand fell off a cliff. And it's not just the on-court product that suffers without number 22, Caitlin Clark. The entire weekend's economic opportunities have felt the fallout.
What made it worse was the feeling of betrayal. Fans had believed the league's optimistic updates, attended games under the assumption she would soon be suiting up, and paid premium prices to see her. When those promises turned out to be hollow, it became clear that her name had been used to squeeze every last cent. Trust evaporated.
For the last 2 weeks, Stephanie White knew where this was going to end up. I would say for the last month or so, they kind of had a feeling where this was going to go. The main issue, another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. Another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. And if you don't call that a lack of transparency, I don't know what to call that.
And the financial fallout wasn't just about ticket prices. Attendance dropped in every city she wasn't playing in. Television networks that had gambled hundreds of hours of primetime slots on her games saw instant ratings declines. Sponsors who had signed on for the Clark effect were now tied to matchups losing ground by the week. It wasn't a slow decline. It was a measurable collapse that exposed just how much of the WNBA's momentum relied on one player.
They could have easily said 2 months, 1 to 2 months. Be evaluated in the next 6 weeks. Instead, they played this day-to-day game time decision probable, questionable nonsense for the last 8 weeks. And that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
The anger boiled into action. Calls for boycotting playoff games spread online. Fans vowed to leave arenas half empty, and the optimism of earlier months was replaced with raw frustration. The league wasn't just out of its biggest star, it was watching the very business model it banked on fold in front of everyone. And that raises the next question. If the short-term future looks this unstable, what does it mean going forward for Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the WNBA itself? Caitlin Clark's season didn't just collapse because of injuries, it collapsed because the league refused to protect her, and in doing so, they broke the trust of the very fans keeping them alive. That's the real damage here. Fans don't want hollow statements, they want accountability, better officiating, and a commissioner willing to stand up for players. Without that, boycotts will gut the playoffs before they even begin. Still, the Fever aren't done. Kelsey Mitchell is competing every night, Aaliyah Boston's leadership is growing, Lexi Hull keeps grinding, and don't forget, Clark will come back stronger in 2026. Let us know down in the comments below if you think the WNBA is to blame for this mess. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.